Hi there and welcome to Wine Searcher. Today I'm looking at a classic French wine. We're in Bordeaux and this is Chateau La Lagune. So we're in the Haut-Medoc on the left bank, and as you head north out of Bordeaux heading towards Margaux, Saint-Julien, Pauillac and Saint-Estèphe, first of all you'll come to Loudun. So not long after you've left the industrial complexes of Bordeaux, there's a Ford factory there and something. And La Lagune is quite a fair-sized property. It's got some lovely sort of classic Medoc soils, deep, well-drained gravels on a hilltop. So beautiful place to produce wines. And that was classified as a third growth in 1855. So actually outside of the classic villages of Margaux, Pauillac, Saint-Julien, Saint-Estèphe, this is the most highly rated wine at that time in 1855. So the history of the chateau dates back to the 1700s. The beautiful chateau on the label was actually completed in 1734, I think, somewhere around then, early 1700s. And it's obviously been through a number of owners, but for most of the early 20th century it was owned by the Cézet family, and the chateau, despite having been highly regarded in the 1850s, had fallen into disrepute and disrepair, and by 1956 you get a terrible frost that kills a large amount of vines in Bordeaux, and actually this chateau, which it's 180 acres in total today, was down to just 5 acres of vines. So although it's 180 acres now, they normally have between 85 and 90 acres planted. So that was really in disrepute. So in 1958, the estate was bought by somebody called Georges Brunet, and he set about replanting it. And the cost of replanting was such that 4 years later he had run out of money and had to sell it to Ayala, the family that own the champagne house Ayala. So it was with them for a few years, and then in 2000 Jean-Jacques Frey, who's a Swiss billionaire, bought the property. He has a number of interests in terms of quality wines throughout France. They have holdings in the Rhone, in Burgundy and in Champagne. Bought the property, and in the last 20 or so years they've been investing very heavily in improving quality there. As part of the measures to improve quality, Jean-Jacques' daughter Caroline has been running the estate, and in what they've done there, they've bought new vineyard, they've converted everything to being both organic, which is now certified. I think it was 2016 that was certified, and now they're certified as biodynamic as well. They've rebuilt the cellars. They've slightly changed the winemaking to try and soften the extraction. They're using about 50% new oak for aging. Wine ages for 18 months in 50% new and 50% sexy fill oak. And they've introduced increased sorting. So as well as sorting by hand, all the grapes now go through an optical sorter to make sure that the fruit is in perfect condition when it gets to the vats. In the cellar, all the vats have been carefully produced to a size to match the plots in the vineyard, so that each vineyard has its own fermenter, so it's just completely full with just the right capacity there. So awful lot of investment in there, and I think that there's been quite an improvement in quality in La Lagune. Very grateful to Caroline Frey for sending me this bottle to review, so thank you, Caroline. So to taste it for you, first of all let's look at the colour, and this has a lovely colour. It's a deep ruby red, not quite opaque, but the pigmentation is very dark. I can just about see through it, but beautiful deep colour. I saw when I poured it, it was staining the decanter. Very vivid. The aromas. I've had this in the decanter for about 3 hours now. The aromas were slightly more pungent when it first opened, but these are still lovely ripe, particularly plum coming forward from there. So I should say the blend of this is approximately 60% Cabernet Sauvignon, 30% Merlot, and 65% Cabernet Sauvignon, 30% Merlot and 5% Petit Verdot, which sort of mirrors the vineyards, which are actually they're 60% Cabernet Sauvignon, 30% Merlot and 10% Petit Verdot. And So you're getting that plummy richness from the Merlot coming through, which is lovely ripeness, and perhaps supported by greater meatiness from Petit Verdot, and slightly covering the sort of the cassis notes you'd expect from the Cabernet. Other things you can smell in there, there's a sort of, almost sort of a milky note, and there are cedary notes from oak as well. Tasting it, the wine is juicy and ripe. Again, the Merlot seems to be the fore. It's rounded, it's rich. Those plummy notes, there's touches of vanilla, but then, you know, some really fine grainy tannins cut in. It's almost a sort of a peppery note to it that gives some grip to the mid palate. There's a rounded, medium to full bodied body. The flavours are lasting well. The acid is quite soft, although there is still some freshness to it. A little bit of sort of red cherry note coming through there. Again, a bit more grip on the finish, perhaps a tiny touch of leafiness. The flavours are lasting really nicely. This is a very approachable wine for something so young. I know I've had it in the decanter for a few hours just to open it up, but it's got a lovely smoothness, a velvety texture to those tannins, as well as some grip. But it's approachable, and yet there's a concentration of the core of lovely dark plummy fruit in there that, you know, should ensure that this will age quite happily for 20 years. This is a really good wine, and I was quite surprised at the price. I looked at the average price on this is just over $40 US. I think that's representing great value, actually, if you can say a wine at that price is great value. But don't just believe me, try it for yourself. Cheers.